Welcome to Earlville Library District's Yarn Craft Club, where we'll be working on making knitting machine gift bags. Whether you reserve one of our machines here at the library or are using this tutorial at home, let's get started. First, we'll be working with waste yarn. Choose a color that contrasts your project color so it will be easier to see in later steps. Load the machine with waste yarn as normal. Crank the handle to line up the white pin with the yarn guide on the machine. Holding the tail of the waste yarn in your right hand and the working yarn in your left, hook the yarn underneath the white pin and drape the tail inside the machine. Begin slowly cranking the machine forward while weaving the yarn behind the next pin that pops up, in front of the next, behind, in front, and so forth until you've made one complete round. The purpose of the waste yarn is so that we have more fabric to work with to create a nice finished edge. It will be removed from the project as a final step. Stop weaving your waste yarn just before you reach the white pin again. Keep the waste yarn wrapped around the back of the last pink pin and slide it into the slot of the yarn guide. Then, move down the front of the machine and insert the yarn into the middle slot of the tensioner. Restart your counter and knit for between 5 and 10 rows. I like to do 5 because it's quicker to remove at the end of a project, but if you're just starting out, having 10 rows might feel more secure. To change colors to your main color yarn, cut the yarn below the tensioner, leaving at least a 6-inch tail. I like to leave a long tail so that I can reuse this waste yarn on another project. Remove the tail of the waste yarn from the tensioner and the yarn guide. Drop it inside the machine to the left of the white pin. Lay the tail for the main color yarn in the same spot as the waste yarn tail, to the left of the white pin. Slip the main color yarn into the yarn guide and down into the middle slot of the tensioner. Hold the two tails downward inside the machine as you slowly crank forward a few pins to make sure the color change is secure. Then, let go of the tails and crank normally, resetting the counter. Knit for a total of 40 rows, changing colors as you go, or not, to make whatever pattern you'd like. After you've knitted your 40th row, crank forward just enough so the white pin is slightly to the right of the yarn guide. Change colors back to more of the waste yarn color. Knit 5 to 10 more rows of waste yarn, whatever you prefer. Now, trim your waste yarn color, leaving at least a 6-inch tail. Remove the waste yarn from the tensioner and yarn guide and lay it inside the machine to the left of the white pin. Hold the tail down inside the machine and crank forward a few pins to make sure that last stitch is secure. Now, crank normally for 2 full rounds until your project falls completely free from the machine. If you've made any color changes within the body of the bag, we'll need to tie those tails together. With the wrong side out, the bumpy side, not the braided side, find each tail associated with a color change and tie those tails together, snipping off extra yarn afterwards. Tie these tails together snugly at first, and then stretch them out a bit before securing so they don't pucker your fabric. Do not tie the waste yarn tails to the beginning and ending tails. Leave those tails to hang. Once again, do not tie the beginning or ending tails by the waste yarn. Turn your project right side out, braided side facing, and stretch the project out lengthwise to see its full shape. Be careful not to pull on your waste yarn tails so that you don't unravel it. Pick an edge to be the bottom of your bag and tug the tails from that edge's waste yarn to the left so that both edges of the seam come together. Find the main color yarn loop that is directly across from the waste yarn tails on the other side of the project and insert a crochet hook. Reminder, you're going to be working with your main color loops, not the waste yarn, and I use a size G crochet hook. Insert it underneath that farthest loop. With that loop still on your hook, reach up and grab the closest loop from the top row and pull it back through the loop on your hook. Leave that loop on your hook and reach down to grab the closest loop on the bottom row and pull it back through the loop on your hook. Alternate pulling the top row loops and bottom row loops through the loop on the hook until you make your way to the other end of the project. When you reach the end of the project, you should be near the yarn tails. Grab the main color tail with your hook and pull it through the loop on your hook. Keep pulling all the way until the tail pulls freely through the loop. To finish off the open edge of the bag, this time, start with your yarn tails on your right. Locate the main color loop right next to the tail and slip the crochet hook underneath that loop. Leave that loop on your hook and reach over to grab the next loop to the left. Pull that loop through the loop on your hook. Keep grabbing the next loops to the left and pulling them back through the loop on your hook one at a time until you've made it back to your starting point. When you reach the main color tail, grab it and pull it back through the loop on the hook. Pull it completely free of the project. Tug gently to secure. Now, to remove the waste yarn, there are two versions. The easiest version is the tail that simply unravels from your project. On my example, it belongs to the top of my bag. It might be the bottom for your bag, depending on which edge you decided to seam together. Give your waste yarn tails a tug to decipher which one will pull freely away. Then, simply continue pulling until you have removed all of the waste yarn. The last row will need a bit more tugging to pull it free from the project. I like to wind this yarn up as I go, so it's ready for me to use on my next project. The second version of waste yarn removal takes an extra minute or two to get started. Here, you'll need to locate the tail of waste yarn that runs along the very edge of the fabric. Tug on it to find it and pull it free from the top row of stitches. Move down the edge a few inches and continue pulling that top strand free from the project. You'll only need to do this until you make it once around back to the beginning. Then, the rest of the yarn will pull freely and easily away from the project. Again, wind this up and use it again later. Now you have nicely finished looking seams. Thread your tails onto a tapestry needle and hide them inside your project. You can decide how much work to put into this, whether you simply let them hang inside your bag or go to the trouble of weaving them in and out a few stitches before securing them for trimming. To attach the ribbon, I cut a length that was 3 times as wide as the front of the bag. Thread the needle with the ribbon and insert the needle slightly off-center to the left through one of the layers of the bag, 10 rows down from the top. Weave the needle in and out several stitches at a time, leaving a ½ inch gap or so, until you arrive about 1 inch from your starting point. Make sure to leave a good length of ribbon tail at the beginning while you're sewing around. straighten out your ribbon tails. Fill your bag with goodies and tie with a bow to secure. Thanks for watching another Earlville Library District Yarn Craft Club tutorial. Stop by anytime to see what upcoming events are available at the library. Or reserve one of our knitting machines to use for the day in addition to all of our tools and user guides. Thanks again, and happy gifting!